Hi, welcome to part 2 of this Introduction to Java tutorial. In the last video, we just talked a little bit about the Java virtual machine and compiling and Java bytecode. And at the end, we ran a quick program, a quick hello world program. In this video, we're going to answer the question what the Java main method is and what it's used for. So the Java main method follows the form of public static void main string array args and then some scoping. And then inside of this scoping we put our statements. So let's dissect this method piece by piece. So the first thing we see is this public. So what does this public mean? So public in this context means that the method is accessible by any object. So basically any object can call this method, any object can call this main method. Static, so we see up here there was a static method. So static is tells us that the main method is a class method. This means that we can call this method without having to instantiate the class. So no need for class instantiation. Okay, and then void, this denotes the return type. In this instance, we're not returning anything. So the void return type tells the compiler not to expect anything back from this function. Not returning anything. Okay. Main is just the name of the function. Next to main, we have some parentheses, open parenthesis with some stuff inside, and then a closed parenthesis. This signifies the parameters that the function is going to use, that are used inside of the function. Okay, so inside of those parentheses we have a string args. So string in this case is an object that represents a sequence of characters. Okay, so you can think of strings, if you would want to represent a single character, you would represent it in a character object. But if a string, you would want to represent a sentence or a paragraph or something like that. So the brackets, square bracket syntax means that this is the array of strings. So that means we have a list of sentences. So array of strings. And then args is just the name of the variable. Okay, and then after that we have some scoping tags. So these scoping tags say anything inside is local to the method. So what that means is when this method starts executing, it does its statements, and when it's done, the garbage collector, if there's any variables that are initialized inside of that scope, will collect those, free up that memory for consumption elsewhere in the program. So a few things to note. There can be, the JVM uses the main method as an entry point into your application. So what that means is the JVM needs to know where your application starts. What's the starting point of your application? So, so that's one thing. The next thing is that each class can have a main method. It doesn't need to have one, though, so it's not required. However, every Java application needs to have at least one main method. So because of this right here, we need to tell the JVM which main method to use. We explicitly tell JVM which main to use. And then additionally, a main in one class can call another main, another class's main. So we'll see a few examples of this in the code examples that we're going to see in a second. But just remember that public means that this function is publicly available. Static means that the function can be called without instantiating the class. Void is the return type, so we're not returning anything. Main is the function name. String with these square brackets means a string array. So let's say array. And then args is just the name of that variable. Variable args. Variable. Okay. So at this point, we're going to go and take a look at a few different ways you can implement main, and we're going to see what it means to call another class's main from inside a separate main. So here I am in IntelliJ. I've created a new package, and I'm going to create two new classes. So I'm going to right-click and say New Java Class. I'm going to call it main1. And then I'm going to create another class called main2. These are going to be very simple classes that aren't really going to do anything. They're just going to print two statements to the screen. So, so inside of main1, I'm going to type out the main function. So public static void main string args. And then I'm going to print out system.out.println inside, inside main1. Okay, and I'm going to run that. Main1. So it's compiling and we're inside main1. So we just printed this simple statement to the screen. But remember how I said that you can also call another class's main inside of your main method. So once the JVM is told exactly which main to use as the entry point, then the main method in another class just is treated as another function that is a part of that class. So you can call it just like you would any other function. So inside of main2, we're going to do the same thing. So we're just going to say public static void main string args. and then we're going to say system.out.print line hello inside main2. So just as a test, I'm just going to run main2 first, and it should say inside main2. Yes, great. So now back inside of the main1 class, I'm just going to call main2.main, and it's expecting a string array of arguments. So I'm just going to pass in the arguments that I received, that this main method accepted, because the types are the same. So don't worry too much about that. But so this is the manifestation of the static keyword. So when we instantiate a class, we would typically do new main2 with some sort of like this, and then we could call main on that function. But instead, we don't need to instantiate it. We can just say the class name dot main, because it's static. So that means we don't need to instantiate it. Something else to note. So if I made this, for example, private, that means main1 cannot call main2's main method, because it's private, meaning it's only accessible inside of main2. So let's change this back to public. And that's all I wanted to show there. So when we run this, we're expecting to see, if I run this from main1's perspective, if I tell the JVM to use the main method inside of main1, it should print out main1 to the screen, and then print out the main, call the main inside of main2. So inside of main2, we're expecting it to print out inside main2. So let's see what happens when we run this. Run main1. Great, so we see inside main1, and then we also were able to call call main2's main method. So so that's great. And then if we just for completeness call run on main2, it just prints inside of main2, because the JVM, there's no method we didn't make a function call saying main1.main. But if we did, it would call main1's main, which would then call main2's main, and we end up with what is called an infinite loop, or infinite recursive calling, which is bad for your computer. So with that, that's how the main method is used in Java. So a takeaway from this is you need to tell the JVM which main that you want to be the entry point for your application. But each class can implement its own main that can be called externally, as if it were just a function that's a part of that class. Okay, start over. So that's that. So the main method is a... Okay. So in this video, we've seen that... how the main method is used by the JVM. If you tell the JVM which main method to use, it will use that method as the entry point to your application. But we also saw that any class can implement the main method. However, if it's not used as the entry point to your application, then it can just be used as a standard function call as a part of your application. So yeah, I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, please feel to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please comment below. Yeah, so until next time.